There is a story from many years ago that tells of an elementary school teacher whose name was Mrs Thompson. As she stood in front of her 5th grade class on the first day of school, she told the children a lie. Like most teachers, she looked at her students and said that she loved them all the same. But that was impossible because there in the front row, slumped in a seat, was a little boy named Teddy Stoddard. Mrs. Thompson had watched Teddy the year before and noticed that he didn't play well with the other children. His clothes were always messy and he constantly needed a bath. In addition, Teddy could be unpleasant. It got to the point where Mrs. Thompson would take delight in marking his papers with a broad red pen. At the school where Mrs. Thompson taught, she was required to review each child's past records, and she put Teddy's off until last. However, when she finally reviewed his file, she was in for a surprise. Teddy's first grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is a bright child with a ready laugh. He does his work neatly and has good manners. He's a joy to be around." His second grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is an excellent student and well liked by his classmates, but he's troubled because his mother has a terminal illness and life at home must be a struggle." His third grade teacher wrote, "His mother's death has been hard on him. He tries to do his best, but his father doesn't show much interest and his home life will soon affect her." Teddy's fourth grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is withdrawn and doesn't show much interest in school. He doesn't have many friends and he sometimes sleeps in class." By now, Mrs. Thompson realized the problem and she was ashamed of herself. She felt even worse when her students brought her nice Christmas presents wrapped in beautiful ribbons and bright paper except for Teddy's. His present was clumsily wrapped in a heavy brown paper that he got from a grocery bag. Mrs. Thompson took pains to open it in the middle of the other presents. Some of the children started to laugh when she found a rhinestone bracelet with some of the stones missing and a bottle of perfume that was only 1 quart full. She stifled the children's laughter when she exclaimed how pretty the bracelet was, putting it on and dabbing some of the perfume on her wrist. Teddy stayed after school that day just long enough to say, "Mrs. Thompson, today you smell just like my mom used to." After the children left, she cried for at least an hour. On that very day, Mrs. Thompson decided to quit teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. Instead, she began to teach children. Mrs. Thompson paid particular attention to Teddy. As she worked with him, his mind seemed to come alive. The more she encouraged him, the faster he responded. By the end of the year, Teddy had become one of the smartest children in the class, well liked by his classmates. Despite her lie that she would love all the children same, Teddy became one of her teacher's pets. An year later, she found a note under her door from Teddy, telling her that he was still the best teacher he ever had in his life. 6 years went by before she got another note from Teddy. He then wrote that he had finished high school, second in his class, and she was still the best teacher he ever had in his life. Then 4 more years passed, and yet another letter came. This time, he explained that after he got his bachelor's degree, he decided to go a little further. The letter explained that She was still the best and favorite teacher he ever had, but by now his name was a little longer. The letter was signed Theodore F. Stoddard, M.D. The story doesn't end there. There was yet another letter that spring. Teddy said he had met the girl and was going to be married. He explained that his father had died a couple of years ago and he was wondering if Mrs. Thompson might agree to sit in the place at the wedding that was usually reserved for the mother of the groom. Of course, Mrs. Thompson said yes. And guess what? She wore that bracelet, the one with several rhinestones missing, and she made sure she was wearing the perfume that Teddy remembered his mother wearing on their last Christmas together. They hugged each other, and Teddy whispered in Mrs. Thompson's ear, "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson, for believing in me. Thank you so much for making me feel important and showing me that I could make a difference." Mrs. Thompson, with tears in her eyes, whispered back. She said, "Teddy, you have it all wrong. You were the one who taught me that I could make a difference. I didn't know how to teach until I met you." When Mrs. Thompson started to give a little attention on Teddy, his life had been changed a lot. He could reach the greatest heights of his success in his life. Teddy could see his loving and caring mother in his teacher. Robert John famously said, "An exemplary teacher will not just enlighten the student, but will also empower the student." Teachers are the most influential role models for developing children. They are responsible for more than just academic enrichment. They are committed to their students' well-being, both inside and outside the classroom. Great teachers should have the deep understanding of where their students are coming from, their backgrounds, their struggles, and their abilities, like how Mrs. Thompson dealt with Teddy. I would like to dedicate this video to all the great teachers who instill hope, encouragement, and the gift of their patience and love. Thank you for watching and keep smiling.